is it mostly stalking in, or is it ambush, or how does that work?
It's predominantly you spot something in the distance, front, say again with them binoculars, fixed focus. They're very good up to about sort of 150, 200 yards. You get within sight of them. You then lay prone in the punt, and the last 100 yards it's a stalking sport.
Yeah.
And I suppose one of the easiest things, you're not ambushing them. You know more or less where they're going to be. You know more or less where you're going to get a shot. Unlike a lot of things, you work this shot out in your head probably weeks beforehand. Just wait for the weather conditions to come together. And we go and do it. We have the shot. We pick up, and then basically the first thing we always do after is, and when we both smoked, it used to be have a smoke and have a cup of coffee. We don't smoke now, so it's generally just sit there and have a cup of coffee.
Suck a boiled sweet.
Just reflect on how it went and sort of relive it over you. And it's something that stays with you for years and years. Each outing, I don't think there's an outing that I probably can't that I don't remember. So it grips you quite considerably.
It does, yeah. You either love it or hate it. There's no halfway between it. It's not something that you take up lightly.
How does one start? How does one take it up non-lightly?
Well, first of all, you need to join a wildfowling club.
Yeah.
Unless you lived in Scotland, as we said before. you then need to decide what it was that you were aiming for. There's a whole different range of specifications of punt and gun. Once you've made your decision, they do come up for sale periodically, usually at very expensive prices, but it's worth looking in the sporting press for the odd punt and gun that comes up for sale. Otherwise it's a question very much of looking to build it yourself. All doable. If you've got the sufficient depth of pocket and sufficient interest, then the sky's the limit.
Okay.
What I would suggest, though, if you were anyone was seriously thinking about having a go, is try and befriend a local punt gunner and go out and see how arduous it is before you actually commit to something.
There is a directory somewhere where people could go if they were interested to actually go and have a look, because I wouldn't know where to start, certainly.
No, not so much a directory, but most wildfowling clubs where the area is suitable. There are some wildfowling clubs where it isn't. The classic example is the River Severn, Gloucester.
Yeah.
It's got a 50-foot tidal rise and fall, comes in and goes out like an express train.
You couldn't lie on a punt
you wouldn't
without
any form of boat in the Bristol Channel.
Be more of a surfboard.
Is pushing your luck. The Wash, the South Coast, the northeast, the northwest, they've all got a long history of punt gunning, and probably the best thing to do would be to get in touch with your local club and see if they could point you in the direction of someone who'd be prepared to help.
And a completely offset question: all foreshore, no inland. You can't go.
You could do
punt gunning on a lake.
In fact, there's only the other day I saw some old photographs of a chap called Snowden Slights, and Snowden Slights was a professional punt gunner in Yorkshire on the Derwent Ings, which was an inland area of floodwater. Someone wrote a book about him in the early 20th century, so often you'll see photographs of him with his punt guns.
I've seen in the shoot room where I shoot, there's a picture of him and he's lined up behind him.
Yeah, with all these guns lined up against the rails.
Quite serious, isn't it?
Indeed. But you also got the inland washes that run through Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, out into there's Norfolk. So I think the answer is yes. A lot of it traditionally also took place on fresh water along the lines that we've just described.
Generally speaking, the freshwater punts were open punts. They weren't decked. A lot of them were open. As Nick said, on the fens, they were generally open punts. Snowden Slights was an open punt, clinker-built punt by the looks of the photographs. A slightly different concept to what we do. Obviously, what we're doing is in a tidal estuary, so you've got all the elements of the sea. But it can be done in Ireland, and you could put our punts on an inland water, whereas you couldn't do it the other way round.
So to be a bit hardier to go on.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, one of the things, only because I've got this sat on the counter, so I'll spend 30 seconds talking about that. If you look at a punt and a gun from the side, 24-foot punt with a big gun on it, it looks positively enormous.
I was going to say 24 foot is...
It's longer than this.
Best part of the counter, yeah.
But if you think about the bird's eye view, the bird is at the side of a channel, it's at ground level. So what the bird sees is the front of the punt, which is its least cross section.
How high does it sit in the water?
The highest point of the punt is probably about 10 inches.
Okay.
And as we said before, if the highest part of the side of your punt is 10 inches, then a wave that's a foot high becomes problematic. But the essence of of punt gunning is that the punt, and as you can see, the gun are all a similar sort of grey colour. This is my hat, and if you can imagine, I'd be laid down behind this, but that much of my head sticks up above it. But from the bird's point of view, which is 60 yards that way, this is silhouetted against a grey sky.
Hopefully.
So hopefully that's relatively inconspicuous, and I'd be wearing this disreputable garment, which my wife actually washed a while ago, much to my annoyance, which is just a simple old-fashioned smock. It's just a cotton
in white
overcoat, originally white. It's accrued this colour over a period of time. It's covered in blood, mud, and God knows what else.
Signs of fun.
Indeed. But the purpose of that is that any part of my body that shows over the side, if you're pushing or sculling, or if I move my shoulders and it happens to go above the level of the gun and the bird sees it, it's up against that pale background behind it. So it's
different sort of camouflage entirely.
It's a different sort of camouflage, but it is quite a sophisticated camouflage. If you think
just onto the barrel, and it's grey paint. Yes.
Yeah. Well, originally, punt gun barrels were painted with red lead and grey paint. It never adhered particularly well to the metal, and you would constantly have been touching it up. If you'd done it once and just sat it there, the red lead and the grey paint would have protected the metal, but as soon as it becomes chipped, which is very, very easy to do, you'd get problems with rust. So this has, in fact, correct me if I'm wrong with this one, this has been painted with a 2-pack.
It has. Then it's been painted over again. Again, even with 2-pack, although it's particularly hard, if you do chip it. So what I've done is it's 2-pack underneath, then it's just a gloss on the top. And people say, "Oh, gloss, it'll reflect."
So
the water's shiny.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a misconception that you have to. It all has to be matte, because actually matte stands out considerably more than gloss. But it's gloss because gloss is harder wearing. But underneath it is 2-pack painted.
Do you name your guns?
I don't know.
No. I know some people do. It's like going in your toolbox and having a hammer called Alfred.
Did you name your punt?
No.
Oh,
These are working boats. There is no tradition locally of naming punts or guns because they are simply working tools.
That's a shame.
I could name them the Grey Destroyers.
Yeah.
See how that works.
And one of the most popular punt gun names, of course, is Boanerges, the offspring of thunder.
Yeah.
Which is always a very apt name for a punt gun.
Whilst we're talking about the gun, one thing that you must remember is the breeching rope needs to be of natural fibre, not polypropylene, because that's an elastic band.
You call it a preaching rope?
Breeching rope.
Breeching rope, I was going to say.
Yeah, no, breeching rope. It's
You pray to it.
No,
it must be of natural fibre, because as I say, polypropylene will stretch, and it will come back and it will hit you in the teeth. As we know, I've got a gun that actually knocked all his teeth out.
In my case, my claim to fame, it was a long time ago, so you can barely see it, but in my ear and all down the side of my face, I've got powder burns from a day in the 1970s with a different gun to this, and I fired it in almost complete darkness.
Yeah.
And because I knew that the birds couldn't see me, what I actually did to get a better view of the proceedings was to lift my head right above the stock. Well, the charge in the gun was damp, and it was almost like a Roman candle, and it spluttered before it went off. But when it did go off, it blew all the priming powder back out the flash hole. It blew the hammer back to full cock, and I got all the percussion cap and burning black powder in my ear, which was no fun at all, and it's still there now 40 years later.
So the proper thing to do, I presume, is to keep your eye on target when you pull that string.
When I'm laid behind it, at the moment I fire, I instinctively just turn my head away, because anything that comes flying back, anything that blows up at the time, I don't want to go blind. Thank you very much.
Some of the old guns where we've got got a screw-in thread, they would have something that was just jammed in it.
A wooden plug.
A wooden plug. And very often the back pressure, it would blow out. And the bottom of the floor would be, Bert was telling me, the bottom of the floor would be on fire several times.
Yes.
You know, with the burning powder. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And the other one, whilst we're talking about potential accidents, of course, once you've taken the shot, most of your birds hopefully would be killed. But you would be carrying a 12-bore to shoot any wounded birds. Well, of course, today we might often use a pump action gun because they're so robust, and the modern ones, you know, they're coated with whatever that prevents them from going rusty. The old professional fowlers would have had either a couple of flintlocks or a couple of percussion guns, or in more modern times, a hammer breech loader of some description. Well, of course,
kept in the boat next to you.
Hammers that catch on bits of the boat are never a good idea, and I think most of us know of either a wildfowler or a punt that's got a hole through the rib. One of the chaps who recently renovated a punt was mildly concerned to see a small circular hole in the floor of the punt, where somehow its previous occupant had managed to fire the gun right through the bottom of the boat.
One of the punts that I restored, which is the one that's in the club web pages, the club website, was a bloke called George Atkins, and I've got his old hammer gun which he used as a cripple stopper. Probably you might want to edit that bit. But
I like it. It's nice. It's quite
Yes, well, it's a working term.
yeah, well, basically that was his gun. It's an old hammer gun, short barreled, 25-inch barrel hammer gun, no choke. In his punt, again, there was a hole that was blown literally through the combing. And when I restored it, I couldn't put that bit of combing back. The combing is the bit that goes around the outside of the cockpit, and that just stopped. It's like a washboard. Yeah. And I was talking to his son. He said, Dad had been in the pub prior to going out punt gunning, had a shot, forgot the hammer gun, went to shoot some birds that were wounded, and he said the hammer caught on the gun and blew in front of so he never used a hammer gun after that. So, but I've got the old hammer gun, so
that's all right. It's still serviceable.
Yeah, it is. I still use it
for those romantic times that you go out, I suppose.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, and again, we've kind of touched on some of the hardships of it. I on a couple of occasions this has happened to me. I've been out with someone else. I've been rowing. I've been sat on that magazine box. Normally, the punts here, you row them pushing forward because it's more mechanically efficient and you can see where you're going. But occasionally you would row it
for a bit of power.
Actually, less power, but sometimes it just takes the kink out of your back, if you see what I mean. And we've been coming back late in the afternoon in a winter, when a few years ago when you had winters, and all of a sudden we've suddenly crashed to a standstill. I've fallen over backwards. It's because we've rowed into sea ice where the surface of the sea has been frozen.
Oh wow.
And sometimes, I mean, the cold is just Baltic, isn't it? It really is.
A few layers.
And you want a few layers of clothing. So, you know, going back to what we were saying before about being to everybody's taste, you have to temper the fun side of it with some of the realities.
That's wildfowling all over, from what I understand, though, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. And the other thing that Nick was saying about ice, it's nothing to go out. You know, you go out late afternoon. The light's starting to fade. You're coming in for the shot on the last of the light, and all of a sudden you look, the deck is coated in half an inch of ice. Where the seawater has come up, or obviously any sprays come up, it's frozen on there. And then all of a sudden your hands are that cold because you're dipping them in the water where you're pushing the punt. It's very arduous, any form of it. So you know, it's one of the things that ideally before someone thinks, oh yeah, I want to go and buy one, I'm going to get one, I'm going to do it.
Go a couple of times to see if
see if
the enjoyment wears off.
Yeah. And you may not be able to do that. Not everyone will take someone out, but as I say, it's one of the things that if you could, if nothing else, go and have a look at it. You know.
So, how do you see the future of the sport?
Excuse me. The number of people who punt around the British Isles has remained remarkably similar for the last 60 odd years. It's very low key. It's very, in terms of its impact, it's beyond the bottom of the scale in terms of impact. Efforts were made to ban punt gunning in the 1960s. in Parliament, and they failed. And I don't think that even the conservation movement, with a small c and in inverted commas, have got punt gunning on their radar, because
it's such a small thing from what you're
yes,
saying.
it would be taking a legislative sledgehammer to crack a ropey old walnut.
When in reality, I presume there's nothing illegal about shooting ducks from a punt.
Exactly.
It's shoulder gun.
Yeah.
No,
how
So
would
it's
you,
no different.
no, I mean, morally, you could argue, I won't bore you with it, but there is a moral argument that suggests that punt gunning is actually less disturbing and more morally acceptable.
Then clacking off 3 or 4 shots at them in flight.
You said that, I didn't. But it's true.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that the thing with it is as well is we tend to promote what we do predominantly on the historical point of view, because it's what this is, 1853 sort of gun. It does still take place, and we're very keen that it continues to take place. What we don't want to see is someone, and we have seen it in the past, someone go, oh, I had a shot of this amount and that, but that's irrelevant. You're talking about the sport and the way it's conducted, not what's the biggest shot you've
It's the
had.
day out, not the target.
yeah,
Exactly. And I think the way that we both look at it is, between us, we've known most of the last of the old professional gunners. And these were tough old birds. These were blokes who shot for a living. If they didn't get anything, they didn't eat. It was as simple as that. And they were a massive store of acquired knowledge, and in the case of many of them, they'd acquired it from their predecessors. So if you like, we are the final receptacle for over 200 years of acquired skill. And occasionally, when we've had a shot, we've looked at each other at the end of it, and we've said, old so-and-so, old Harold Pycroft was one of the names out of a hat, legendary punt gunner. He could not have done better than we did. And sometimes to think that, I'm as good as these old boys were. You can't do it any better than that, and that's what I'm satisfied with, not what's dead on the water in front of me.
With, probably 50, 60 years of experience under your belt, you finally feel like you're getting to the point.
After about 40 years, yes.
Yeah.
Many hundreds of trips.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and the other thing is when you first take it up to any degree, 30 years ago when we built the my punt, or the first punt that I built, we used to go out religiously, and we'd go out, and the conditions weren't particularly good, but because your enthusiasm, you'd go out.
Just want to get out.
And now we got to an age and a period in our life where we go when we know it's going to be particularly good, or there's a possibility of it being good, which isn't so many times, but probably equates to exactly the same amount of shots we have. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's the right way of doing things, though, right? It's a bit like...
Yeah, and certainly when you talk about punt gunning, always the focus is on the gun for people who aren't used to them. We grew up with punt guns, so that's not the main topic of conversation.
It clearly is, because it's awesome.
Absolutely, but the real topic of conversation is the degree of skill that the bloke behind it has.
A bit like anything stalking, pigeon shooting. Everyone loves the gear, but then you soon, after many years, slowly realise that actually it makes no difference whether you've got a 10 grand rifle or a £100 rifle. It's what you know and how you use it.
It's where you place and get within shot of your quarry. And that's the hard bit. You can have all the fanciest gear in the world, but if you haven't got enough skill to get within range of your quarry, then all the best stuff in the world is irrelevant unless you can do that bit that you need, the knowledge that you need to acquire to get to that stage. So, I think we've about covered everything with it, don't you?
Yeah, we've scratched the surface.
Just about.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's so much more to do. I genuinely would love to go out. I think it would be the coolest thing.
We'll see what we can arrange.
We'll arrange it. If that, I'll build my own pump. Bollocks. Have a damn rubber dinghy with a 12-bore punt on the front. Awesome. Guys, thank you very much for watching. And thank you very much to Nick and Alan for bringing this awesome tool along to show us and discuss. It's not something you see every day, and with what you say about 100 wildfowling punt gunners.
Yes, punt gunner.
Punt gunner. It's a real rare opportunity to have a look and learn something from the experts.
Thank you.
No, thank you.